If you are the Araquanid, however, you have to worry about taking unnecessary damage from the Raging Bolt, Thunderclaps, Volt Switches. Those are still going to hurt. But let's dive into the match. It is going to be the Raging Bolt paired up with the Urshifu for Lorenzo. And there's that Miraidon and Incineroar for Roy.
And I think having the Raging Bolt with the lead already on turn 0 is really nice into that Miraidon. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of an interaction between which Pokemon wants to try to Terrasilize out of the Dragon-type weakness, as they both have Electric Terror. But Raging Bolt's one of those Pokemon that I think still excels even after Miraidon's introduction into the current meta.
Exactly, and this turn 0 I think is going to be really critical because there's so much damage potential that can come out from this choice specs Miraidon, particularly when you have the support of that potential fake out with Incineroar that can break a Focus Sash on the opposing side, as well as slow down the potential Raging Bolt can give. Because Miraidon has had its Hadron Energy and ability activated.
Yes.
It was a very interesting launch today, and I'm still getting through it.
Yeah.
It then means that the electric terrain is going to help out that Raging Bolt as well. So you want to be careful that you're not going to have to take extra damage from electric type attacks. Yeah,
the Hadron Engine being such a prevalent ability, it having the capability of colliding through with so much damage onto your opponents is something that you really need to be wary of when facing up against it. Hence why the Urshifu is going to go for the cheeky detect, but no Terror out from the Raging Bolt. It's just going to get felled from the Draco Meteor.
Do you know what I love? Is it's like I don't even need my dragon typing at the moment. I keep it when I deal the damage, but I don't need it for that defensive weakness. Instead, I'm going to get the singular one-hit KO, removing that Raging Bolt from the fray. And that's definitely one way to avoid taking unnecessary extra electric damage in electric terrain from an electric Pokemon.
Yeah, it really is. And you know the part, Lou, where I was saying, oh, you know how great Raging Bolt is into Miraidon? Yeah, not when you have a Draco Meteor being able to pick up a KO, one-hit KO, onto your Assault Fest set. Reminder, this Raging Bolt has been such a terror in every single format ever since its introduction.
I think that gives you the flexibility, though, and a reason why, you know, going for the Terror Electric there. Yes, you're not going for the electric type move, but you are losing your weakness to Dragon type attacks. Just in case that Assault Vest Raging Bolt was able to hang on and retaliate with the Draco Meteor of its own, it won't be doing that super effective damage to the Miraidon. Incineroar now in a position where it can always try and go for a parting shot, just try and reduce the offensive pressure that Calyrex has. The issue is that Urshifu, it is going to have that Unseen Fist ability, being able to break through any potential defensive plays, and Wicked Blow with the critical hit isn't going to be affected by the previous Intimidate or any parting shots that come through. Miraidon just sticking with what it knows best. The Draco Meteor, enough to take the Urshifu right down to his Focus Sash. Anything Incineroar wants to go for will actually get the KO.
Raining Meteorites in order to break that Sash will allow it to be taken out in the following attack. Miraidon being able to take that quite nicely there, and the U-turn double up will mean Lorenzo is now down to their final 2 Pokemon. Fuck, what final Pokemon 2 they are. At least the one is this Calyrex Ice Rider. We know it is such a threat. If it gets a Trick Room set up right now, it will be in the driving seat.
We're playing the dance of the Incineroars here. It's actually the U-turn on Roy's side, parting shot on Lorenzo's instead. And I think that works perfectly because you get your Incineroar off the field to intimidate later on, but get the damage to be able to KO the opposing Urshifu.
Yes.
Speaking of KOs, Miraidon is also down and out for the count.
Yes, it is. And actually being able to prioritize not allowing Roy to have that switch out, which you want to be able to safeguard your main sweeper, is very important. And Lorenzo just wanted to say, right, okay, I don't want to allow Roy that availability and flexibility to do so. I just need to pick up a KO right now. If I really want to, I can try to prioritize on getting Trick Room set up yet again. But the most crucial thing, as we all know in VG, pick up the KOs when you can.
Incineroar's in an interesting spot now. It can go for the fake out. You don't have to worry too much about the Amoonguss. Both your Pokemon are grounded, electric terrain's in place, so they cannot be put to sleep. Incineroar can potentially then just go, hey, I don't need to go for the fake out. It can go for some Flare Blitz into the Amoonguss, but you've got to watch out for the Calyrex. It has got a Chilling Nade boost. Yes, it has just been intimidated, so things are a little neutralized out, but the fact that the Farigiraf is in a precarious spot, something that could go into it, like the Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss followed up with a Glacial Launch, might be able to get the knockout.
But Calyrex is actually going to opt to go as well as this little mushroom partner for a Protect. It wants to just sort of navigate and see, and scout out, should I say, what Roy's actions are going to be. Fake out into the Calyrex, and the Farigiraf is going to try to go for the Psychic Foot. So for at least the subsequent turn right now, we do, if Roy wants to try to shut down Trick Room at least, he won't necessarily be able to do it to an exceptional standard because of the fact that it's an assault vest. It does not have safety goggles. The redirection will be able to come to the fore unless we see the Farigiraf being able to get a Trick Room set up to neutralize its effects.
Also, the double protect not only stalls out the fake out, but does go through another turn of this potential electric terrain in play. So that means that Amoonguss will have a happier time trying to put some Pokemon to sleep. Until then, though, we're going to see adjustments on Roy's side of the field, bringing that Incineroar back in later and bringing Ursaluna to the field right now. I like this play by Lorenzo. I believe it's Lorenzo now. We're going to see the
it is.
Calyrex Ice Rider go into the water Terra type. Just give it a little bit more flexibility on the field, not have to worry about any flare blitzes coming through from that Incineroar when it rejoins.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing in being able to move away from Grass Terra for your Calyrex Ice Rider into the water type, and there's a lot of advantages to it. And we see the Psychic focus into the Amoonguss, guaranteeing a 2-hit KO, and the Glacial Lance comes down. No Trick Room setup. Roy expecting a passive play there. Ursaluna is out of the count, and all of a sudden, we have the scenario of the Incineroar not most likely being able to bring this one back, and a lot of momentum for Lorenzo.
I honestly feel like the Calyrex was like, I don't need Trick Room at this point of view. I'm turning into the water Terra type, so anything you throw at me in terms of a Flare Blitz isn't going to be really doing anything. Knockoff, not going to worry about that either. U-turn, well, whatever. I'm a water type at this point. Instead, capitalize on those Chilling Neigh boosts, trying to get one in before the Intimidate comes back into play. You know the Farigiraf is just one Pollen Puff away from going out. Yes, at this point in time, Incineroar can maybe go for something like the Fake Out, or even just the Flare Blitz to get rid of that Amoonguss. But it's going to really struggle to deal with that Calyrex that actually has high horsepower. So it also has an answer to the Incineroar.
Yeah, and it's really well placed. And Lorenzo identifying the scenario of just saying, right, there could be a switch in here. I just at least want to limit the amount of choices Roy has available. We're seeing a similar play as to a couple of turns ago. Double protect. You don't want to fall victim to any sort of flinching in this turn, as Farigiraf just goes for the Psychic once again, hoping to pick up a KO onto that Amoonguss. And in this scenario, honestly, this is going to be really tough for Roy to be able to bring back.
Yeah, the play makes sense, trying to get the knockout on the Amoonguss, and of course you want to go for that Fake Out to really start to slow things down. But the fact that you have the capability to double protect, you're not choice locked into anything here on Lorenzo's side. You're now in prime position to do what we were saying earlier, Costa. You can always try and go for that high horsepower, get rid of the Incineroar. But I think this turn, Glacial Lance, KO the Farigiraf, get some damage on the board with Incineroar, maybe even allow the Amoonguss to go for the Rage Powder as it's doing, to just guarantee you draw in a potential Flare Blitz or anything like that to protect that Calyrex.
Oh, and the speed interactions over on Roy's side will mean Incineroar moves first before the Farigiraf, meaning, of course, that the Farigiraf has to try to focus down with the Psychic, but at this point, is it going to be enough to allow the Incineroar in the subsequent turn to somehow pick up a KO? But no, it's a foul play, which is really good utility there, allowing the guaranteed 2-hit KO, and the Incineroar just barely surviving on a slither of health, but will it be able to bring this one back at that HP range?
The foul play was definitely doing a lot more damage than considered, but the Calyrex still looks in a good position against this Incineroar. Incineroar will move first, it will go for the knockoff, but as you can see, going to be able to hang on, and all this Calyrex needs to do is go for that Glacial Lance. Do not risk the miss of a high horsepower miss.
No.
You know that single target, multiple Chilling Neigh boosted here is going to be able to get the KO, and Lorenzo will win game 1 of the Swiss round 14.
Well played from Lorenzo, really putting the pressure on, going into 6th gear with that Ice Rider. And at this point, I do really love the plays that were, chosen from Lorenzo, going on the immediate offensive, saying, I don't necessarily need to straight away get the Trick Room set up. And you could see Roy was sort of having to go now back down to the drawing board in order to better plan against it, even though the Araquanid is a great utility to be able to have under Trick Room conditions. I don't feel like maybe there's any play for it. You need to be able to get those quick KOs on Lorenzo's side.
I mean, Roy had a very commanding beginning. Being able to go for that Draco Meteor, get rid of the Raging Bolt, and this is where the Araquanid comes back into play, because if you get rid of that Raging Bolt, as you did so effortlessly in that game 1, Araquanid has a pretty easy time here. The Wide Guard, I think, would have been really helpful against that opposing Calyrex Ice Rider, because then all you're really forcing it to do is go for the high horsepower. That not only is a single target attack, but there's a couple of Pokemon that can work around it. Araquanid obviously can do it. Incineroar has the potential to go for a Grass Terror, and as long as you've got that Wide Guard, you then don't have to worry about Incineroar falling victim to a Glacial Lance.
Yes.
It will really be all about, though, preserving those key Pokemon, because if you lose your supportive kind of choice, then the other Pokemon will be a little bit more exposed. I think for Roy, I want to see the Miraidon being played a little bit more conservatively. I loved the big Draco Meteor at the beginning. That was great.
That was so good.
But you are choice spec locked into it, and your special attack will be dropped and dropped and dropped, meaning that you're not giving enough presence on the field and allowing yourself to get KO'd. It could be the case of going for a hard switch, but I think it could be worth it.
I think that's a really good speculative point, because you want to be able to at least maintain that consistent threat in the back at any point. Draco Meteor was fantastic, but losing it so early on means that you had to rely on the Farigiraf a tiny bit more, and it didn't actually get as much going. It was just going for the sidekicks until the foul play, which was pretty massive, but at least guaranteeing the 2-hit KO was really good onto the Amoonguss, but at what cost? The Ice Rider just went for the attacks and started picking up the KOs in a very, very quick fashion.
I mean, the Farigiraf definitely has play. The Electricity boosting up the defense as well is really nice, but another way that you can help out against the Calyrex is that Araquanid paired up with the Miraidon, facing down against the Urshifu and the Calyrex Ice Rider for Lorenzo.
Yeah, and I think being able to have the wide guard for potential discharge is so nice as a utility tool here, whilst it also covers for the Glacial Lance. So really nice synergy from this pairing here, especially against an Urshifu, because we've seen that, at least with my side and experience, Lou, of discharge, I feel like there's such a high probability of a full paralysis whenever I see it being launched out.
That's really true, actually, and if you've got that wide guard support, then you are in prime position with your speed advantage as well to be able to go for that, break the focus dash. And I think it's wise then for the Calyrex to get out of there, knowing it cannot be fully capable with its Glacial Lances. And straight out of the blocks, we're going to get beautiful and Bejeweled out here on the main stage at Stockholm as the Electric Terror comes through once again for this Miraidon.
Here we go. We know how much damage this Pokemon is capable of, and we're about to have a bit of a preview on it, at least on the Amoonguss, as the Urshifu does go for the Detect. It does not want to have its Focus Sash broken and potentially even have to incur that paralysis status, as Discharge is the move of choice. I don't see any reason not to go for this. The question is, Amoonguss, are you going to be able to avoid a 2-hit KO with so many multipliers at hand?
The multipliers are in strength as the Discharge comes through, and Amoonguss will be able to take another one of these. I have to credit the way Lorenzo has played. You have preserved the Focus Sash on that Urshifu. One more Discharge isn't going to be enough to get the KO. Amoonguss also will not fall down to another Discharge, whereas Araquanid, the only way it can really hang on here is for going for that defensive wide guard. Urshifu and Amoonguss aren't going to care about that. They're single target type attackers. So yes, if you go for the Discharge, you're not going to get the KO on either Pokemon, allowing Lorenzo to capitalize on that and allow damage dealt from both Pokemon into something like the Araquanid. If you get rid of that Pokemon, considering Unseen Fist can also just completely go through anything, it's just a really nice way to preserve things for that Calyrex in the back.
It is a tricky situation, because whether you're trying to gamble on rolls in terms of guaranteeing a 2-hit KO on the Amoonguss or a paralysis status on the Urshifu, Roy needs to try to go for it. They're gonna stay in with the same strategy as turn 1, wide guard, Araquanid, Discharge, Miraidon. It will, of course, be breaking the Focus Sash, bringing the Urshifu down to 1 HP's worth. But can it pick up a paralysis? Can it even force a full paralysis? Because I feel like if it does, this may well be game over.
Let's see, Urshifu goes down to its Focus Sash, but are there any secondary effects that are going to come into fruition here? No, Urshifu free to go for the Wicked Blow, can connect into the Miraidon, do about 2/3 of damage. The key thing as well with Miraidon is its choice specs. It's locked into this. There isn't necessarily a safe switch on the opposing side unless Ursaluna has come in the back, but I'm pretty sure that might have been dropped for the Araquanid.
And I think the Urshifu may well actually be tempted to go for the Sucker Punch here if it's within range. It feels like it is that Miraidon, and may actually be picked up here as a KO, as that might be a bit of an indication of what's going on here. Araquanid does switch out as well, as we saw Lorenzo bring in the Rage Ball. Farigiraf will be able to block a Sucker Punch. Really, really smooth play from Roy in order to guarantee it at the cost of the Farigiraf taking the damage, as there's no switch out here. Lovely, exquisite play. Sucker Punch denied, as the Miraidon does go for the Discharge. It will be picking up the Urshifu, and Lorenzo, oh wow, the Farigiraf survives. That's amazing.
You can block the Sucker Punch, but you cannot protect yourself from that Discharge. Thankfully, there is enough in the tank to allow Farigiraf to hang on the field here. The one question, however, is what can stop this Miraidon at this point? The Farigiraf as well has the capability to, you know, it can just go for a helping hand, deal even more damage. Yes, it will fall down at that point, but that could be what Roy needs to be able to pivot the Araquanid back in. I think that would be great considering you have got the Glacial Lances coming your way again. The issue, however, is the Raging Bolt. Lorenzo has preserved it, has not let it go down very early doors. Frigoraf doing what it's doing best, though. There's the helping hand, Costa. This is going to hurt.
It's just there for the support, and it is ready to try to get as much damage it can out of Roy's Miraidon. 5.7 multiplier stack in effect right now. Although it's a quad-resisted Pokemon on the other side of the field with an Assault Vest, it does deal roughly about 30-40 HP in what should have been at least like maybe 5.
Honestly, I feel like if that hadn't been a protect on the Calyrex Ice Rider, we would have seen the oomph that we were expecting to come through there. Miraidon as well being able to show its defensive capabilities against a fellow electric type and not taking too much damage from the Volt Switch. And now Lorenzo is in a really, really difficult spot. You've already gone for the protect on the Calyrex. It's very high risk to go for it again, but I feel like you also have no choice. Because of how strong that Miraidon is at this point in time, that's going to be able to deal so much damage with the discharge. It does allow Roy as well to bring Pokemon in like the Incineroar or even the Araquanid from the back to have gone for White Guards, but the Incineroar's here to have that fake-out pressure, try and maybe put the Calyrex in check.
Yeah, and at this point, you're able to at least have even more pressure and just have to, it feels like Roy just has to keep on going with the discharge at this point, because at least you're going to be able to directly threaten the Calyrex, but it may introduce that switching of the Raging Bolt to better take that damage. And we know that the Amoonguss does have access to Pollen Puff. You could go through a situation of being able to get that recovery going, as this Assault Vest Incineroar will be threatening. We've got a double protect failing to connect, and a protect from the Amoonguss.
Amoonguss shows you how it's done, and of course Incineroar will have to take damage from the discharge, but as you mentioned, the Assault Vest there to try and negate some of that so that the Incineroar can maybe go on the offensive with a Flare Blitz. But first is the superstar shining light bulb itself, the Miraidon, able to get so much damage on that Calyrex. Oh, it also gets the paralysis on the Incineroar. That's not quite what you want to do, but I do think that's what you want to do, though. That's it. Get it on the Calyrex. Incineroar's time is definitely limited. It's not able to move, but let's just hope for Roy that maybe it was going into that Amoonguss and wouldn't have done damage anyway.
Yes, that is definitely what I'm going to try to feel for Roy's case.
Yeah,
but,
his reaction wasn't too upset, so maybe that was the case.
Maybe that was indeed the case, but at this point, Electric Terrain has now expired and may even introduce Roy to take into consideration a switch out here, but there's a Trick Room. You need to be wary of it. Is there a way for you to be able to not only navigate a way around it, but then there's the Glacial Lands, and the paralysis may mean Incineroar might not even be able to move, but we've got the redirection of Amoonguss available.
I like this as well. You know that you're going to force the protect on the Calyrex, so you can capitalize on that, make a switch. Incineroar now can go for the Flare Blitz. It's not enough, though. Amoonguss is still in play. The Electric Terrain is also gone. You do have to take the recoil from the Rocky Helmet. Is that enough? Incineroar is fainted and out of here.
Spore may be incoming as well with that protect, and it is, and it's going to go ahead and focus, connect, of course, 100% of the time with the Araquanid. No goggles on this little water spider, but in this scenario, you're not going to be able to wide guard away the damage and one-hit KO threat from this discharge.
Love the way Lorenzo has piloted this endgame. You have completely pinned down your opponent. The Electric Terrain's back on, but it's a little too late for little Araquanid there. It's going to take a nap as this Swiss round closes out. The one thing you've got to contend with, though, is the fact that the Calyrex is paralyzed. You have the Miraidon in the field now. You can just go for Electro Drift or even a discharge. Who worries about the Araquanid right now when you just need to get the knockouts across the board? Electro Drift will come down into that opposing Amoonguss, remove it from the fray. My question, however, Costa, there's a Raging Bolt in the back for Lorenzo. Yes, these two Pokemon in the beginning now, you can deal with those, you can get through them, but how do you beat the Raging Bolt?
I think that's the real key thing here, even though the Ice Rider will be going ahead and even dealing, you know what, the fact that it's single target right now may even mean that this is most likely going to be, let's say, around a 30-40% damage dealt onto the Araquanid if it did not get paralyzed, of course. But the main key point that you did mention, Lou, is this Raging Bolt. It's not paralyzed, it's an electric type right now. It has electric terrain. It is up against a water type. It is liking what it's looking at.
Yes, and I also quite like how Amoonguss by default has got 2 KOs there with the Rocky Helmet. Araquanid just being able to hang on following that Volt Switch, still going to be taking a nap, allowing this Calyrex, as long as it is able to move, it does get that Glacial Land single target, cleans up the match, the set. Lorenzo is victorious over Roy Gomez.
And in what stellar fashion as well, in a very good standing, Lorenzo is that one win closer to a top 8.
What an amazing match there from Lorenzo, overcoming a lot of odds considering that he was bringing a lot of slow Pokemon, Calyrex and Mungus, and we didn't want to see Trick Room. Am I right?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And I think the way that he was able to handle that is just a bit of a proof that, once again,